Welcome back to the Aversio Experience podcast, where we explore healing, wellness, and the journey of becoming more conscious humans. Today's episode is a little different, and it's one we've been looking forward to.
For a long time on this podcast, we focus primarily on the science and benefits of functional mushrooms, which we love, and that is never going away. But the truth is, the heart of this show has always been something bigger than just mushrooms. It's about the human experience of health, the messy parts, the routines, the habits, the philosophies, and the things that we are learning in real time as we navigate life, wellness, and conscious business right alongside you.
Yeah, and we realized that the most powerful conversations aren't always the perfectly structured ones. Sometimes the most meaningful stuff comes from honest, behind-the-scenes conversation about how people actually live. So that's what today is, one of our unhinged episodes where we loosen the structure a little, step outside the usual format, and share more of the real human side of health and the experiences that shape us.
Because healing doesn't just come from information. It comes from connection, from storytelling, from learning through each other's experiences.
So settle in, fungi friends. There's a mushroom for every moment, including this one. Now let's dive in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Aversio Experience podcast. Today, we have a very, very special guest. You know, there is a very specific kind of person who does everything right, who gets the accolades, achieves everything that they want in their life, and then sometimes there feels like a shift. Today's guest lived that exact moment, and instead of pushing through it, she let it take her practice apart and rebuild it from the ground up and how she showed up in the world. Dr. Laura Foster spent 25 years as a chiropractor before her entire life stopped making sense on the inside, even though it looked finished on the outside. She sold the practice she built and now spends her time leading breathwork, homeopathy, and retreats for women going through their own version of that same reckoning. Laura, welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you here.
Thank you. Such a blessing. I feel really like this has been, as we talked about already, a long time coming and also perfect timing. So thanks for having me.
Couldn't be more perfect timing. Audience out there, as you're listening, the reason we know Dr. Laura is because we have done breath work with her. And today is the day we needed the breath work. So we actually did a little breath work, Dr. Desiree and I, beforehand, and now we're in this call. And I'm just going to say, we could just drop this episode right now and sit here and just do breath work together, and you would all have the best day of your life. But we're not going to do that. But I just want you to know, before Dr. Laura starts sharing her wisdom and we get into this conversation, I'm over here breathing in my heart, feeling super regulated just by being in her presence. And I hope that's what you're going to feel as you listen today too.
For sure. Okay, before we get into any of the shift, because I think there's so many different directions that we could go here. You know, Laura's just such a special soul, and you can feel her energy through the screen if you follow her on Instagram or you've been to her retreats. I really want people who are listening to understand who you were before the shift, before you shifted into breath work and this new era of who you are. Take us back to that version of you that was building the chiropractic practice. Like, what did a normal week actually look like for you at the height of it all?
Such a great question. And I had a sense that you might be asking me that. So it was really fun for me to think back about all the different versions of me over all the different years. And, you know, chiropractic practice was a long experience for me, 25 years and then 3 rogue years in Costa Rica. And you know, along the way, what was interesting about that is I have often referred to those years as the years that I grew up. You know, practice helped me grow up. My practice members helped me grow up. My team, it held me in some of the biggest transformational times of my life. And it also allowed me to birth this new way that I am now in the season that I'm in. All of that was such a big part of my own becoming. But I can definitely tell you that I had some hustle in there. You know, there were some years where I was operating under a system of just, trying to make my practice successful and, having a young family and a busy life. Really in my 30s, I was just looking back, I was just hustling, and I don't regret that. It gave me a lot of the things that I wanted, but the days were full. My husband at the time traveled, he was a pilot, and my kids were young, and I had a certain specific way that I wanted to support my kids in their own becoming. I didn't want to have them in daycare, and I also didn't have the latitude to be able to, bring in an army of people. And I think one of the things I recognized was how much I wanted to hold all those pieces. So, I had a lot of balls in the air at one time. I definitely I prided myself on that. My practice was busy. There were 150 to 200 patient visits a week.
Wow.
I don't even know who that was. I did great work. And at the same time, I didn't do it alone. And it was also really important to me to use my voice and do all the things. I mean, back then, there wasn't social media. 2010 is when Instagram came out. I was already in my 40s at that point. So in those early years, it was a lot of literally showing up in person, writing the articles or standing on the stage or finding ways to get myself in front of other people in really the most uncomfortable ways. But that hustle and the practice speed, even at which I operated, it all felt very balanced in my own mind at the time, but it was only because most of the time I could keep all the balls in the air. But that was the pace at the time. And let's not even get into the fact that I was also really big into triathlon and I was doing Ironman races. And so that was on my down.
Everything of a woman's body you could possibly ask of her.
100%.
And is that to even go before that? Okay, so we pick up where you're, married, children, career, and then beyond. My husband's done Ironman, so there's a special kind of crazy, Dr. Laura.
There is. Yeah.
Running's hard enough. Why do you also need to swim and ride a bike? It's a special kind of person. So now I know something about you I didn't know before.
You really do. I sometimes don't even share that because you're right. There is a special personality that goes along with it. It's not a bad personality, but it does definitely say something about you.
And you said something before we started recording too, which shared a bit about audience. We've talked about Ayurvedic medicine here and there. And I've probably shared that I have a very, I would say, out of balance Vata constitution on most days. Dr. Desiree is very balanced in her Vata Pitta Kapha, but Dr. Laura shared, if I can share, a Pitta constitution, which I wouldn't have pegged you for in the interactions we've had. But as we now have two pieces of the picture, Pitta constitution and an Ironman triathlete.
You see it?
I see. You know what it is? It gives me such hope for others I know who have Pitta constitution and have been Ironman triathletes, not naming any names. My husband, but who you are today, which makes me can't wait to get to the end of the conversation. The transformation you're about to describe to us means something really powerful when we know where that all came from. And it makes me wonder what you were like as a child, as a teenager before that. Were you always the straight A student, hustle and grinder, go-getter, perfectionist, people pleaser type? Is that you?
I don't think so. Oh, no, I actually don't think I was. I went through my own kind of experience in my early 20s where I decided to I don't know how this happened, and you're just actually bringing this to mind for me, is I feel like I shifted my identity in my early 20s where I wanted to see myself in a different way. I didn't have the same level of confidence. I didn't see myself as an athlete. I was a good student, but I wasn't the best. And I developed those in my late teens and my early 20s because I stepped away from where I had grown up. When I got 18, my parents retired. So I was the last child. And then they retired young, by the way. They were 50, but they took off. If my mom and dad are listening, don't worry, I understand. I didn't feel abandoned. But they went on to live this part of their life where they're now retired. And I remember thinking to myself, all of the traditions of our life had shifted and I wanted to see myself in a different way. I went to university and I thought, I'm going to become a rower. I didn't even know what a rower was. We didn't have rowing in my hometown. I joined the rowing team and I started doing things that were really not characteristic of me. But along that line, I think that's when I lit the real fire, so to speak, of my Pitta energy. I'm not a strong Pitta anymore. I have this balance with Vata.
We feel your balance. We feel the balance.
And I'm aging. And so that's can be fairly typical. You start to move a little bit more Vata energy into you. But I definitely don't feel I was like that as a child. I think it's just a lot of the circumstances of my early life I wanted to see myself differently somewhere along the way.
Fascinating. I'd love to come back to that moment for you. The moment where you made the decision that I'm not going to be her anymore, being much younger, I think, than what
Right.
the typical experience is when women particularly have the knowing that they're
Mhm.
not that person. And then,
Yeah.
you set this intention of who is future me. You get the clear vision and you
Right.
intentionally move to it. Where I think at 18, in those years, it's maybe not so intentional, but it's happening for a reason.
True story.
So
Yeah,
beautiful.
very, very beautiful. Super cool. Laura, you've said it that your life at that point, going to running a successful chiropractic clinic and all the things and all the balls that you're juggling and doing, career, marriage, family, and it still didn't feel the way that you needed it to feel. What was the actual moment, if there was, where you remember first noticing the gap? Like not a big
Mhm.
collapse, but like that
Yeah.
first crack.
I would say it had a lot to do with the fact that I really got used to doing goal setting. It was my thing. And I now understand why I was doing that. But at the time, I just thought it was the thing you did when you wanted to grow the life that you wanted to grow. And so I would set big, audacious goals. And, oftentimes I would achieve them in one way, shape, or another. And I remember I had made a big goal around impact. And I, so to speak, achieved it. And it had financial implications and things like that. And I remember giving it 10 seconds before I was already discounting it and setting another one. And I wouldn't say it was the biggest moment, but the fact that I remember that tells me that I really noticed that I had been setting goals, and there's nothing wrong with setting goals for you goal setters out there, but just to understand why we set goals. I was setting goals to distract myself from the life. The same reason, Brandy, that I was going 200 odd kilometers on a race is because, as wonderful as those things were, I was really trying to distract myself from the parts of my life that didn't feel the way I needed them to feel. And that obsessive goal setting was a way for me to just kind of ignore that part, not completely ignore it, but make it less important and keep fueling and filling the parts of my life that it felt like they were working. So anything that felt aligned, I was like throwing my energy into it. And anything that wasn't so aligned, I was just trying to buffer myself from the discomfort of knowing that. And so that's when I started to recognize, like, why am I actually setting all these damn goals? Like, what is the point of it? And part of the trick of all that can be that a lot comes from achieving a goal. Like I said, there was part of me it was the impact, but the other part was there was financial implications, and it got me closer to certain things that I wanted in my life. But when it starts to not feel the way you need it to feel, it's confusing.
Yes.
Why is the moving towards the things that I think are going to make me feel the way I want to feel not actually allowing me to feel that way? That was like depressing, concerning.
Yeah.
And I think the level of self-awareness for me is that's when it all started to kind of come unglued, I guess you could say.
Yeah. What awareness is
That's
that is that level of awareness, that it's how big does the goal have to get for me to realize that the adrenaline rush I'm going to get at the end of it is going to get boring at some point in life. And I mean, I think so many people live their lives this way. Very few people are setting goals as big as what you're talking about. And I think even the little goal, the little goal, the little goal, the little goal eventually gets us to an awareness that there's something bigger than just the goal, because it is this real big question of like, who am I and what am I here to do? And we can become addicted to the adrenaline of the goal setting, the goal setting, the goal setting for a very long time if we don't really listen in those 10 seconds after I got it. We look at addiction, gambling, right? And we think about, why do people become addicted to gambling? And actually we find out they don't want to win. They want to gamble so that they can continue chasing. Once they've won, it's over for them what they're really after. And how many of us have lived our lives where we really just gambling with those goals along the way? It's so interesting to hear you describe it. And I hear you so clearly.
Yeah. And that's actually an incredible example to even use that, because who doesn't have a level of addiction and searching for that dopamine rush related to anything is,
Yes.
foods that we eat that aren't
Yep.
actually foods, or just even experiences, whether, like you said, it's the gambling or it's, drama or
Yep.
conflict or whatever it is. But that's what it was for me. Here's the trickiness for a lot of that, though, is that society rewards us
Yes.
for achievement. And because I was very much on that kind of male energy, I thought that was kind of everything. I thought
Yeah.
that's just what you did. So that was the moment when I realized, and to the point of what you just said, which is that knowing for me came in my late 30s and early 40s, where all of a sudden I was like, tick, 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 tick. Huh.
I hear you.
Right.
And what else? Like, what else could there be? Because, like, that's the ultimate of success. People will live their whole life and never get to that point, and you're not even a third of the way through your life. So you do really start to see, like, how long can I maintain this level of achievement, the hustle and grind, and is it what I actually want? Like,
well, that's the difference
especially when you bring
between
up the financial piece.
right.
And it doesn't matter what the number is, but I had to question myself at one point, like, is there a number that's enough? Like, what am I chasing? And I mean, I was just at an event where your beautiful friend Jen Pike got on stage and said it to many people. Like, what if this number X is enough for me, even though it's not enough for everyone else in the room? And I cried in that moment because I feel it so deeply. Like, I'm going to just tell you, audience, how they're listening, it's not the money that makes you rich.
It is not. And
You have 3 women here who will tell you it's not it.
But you also, I think, like a lot of things, we have to have the pendulum swing in one direction for us to feel that. It's I think someone who hasn't achieved whatever number or close to the number that they imagine, they will then look at that and say, it's easy for you to say because you have X, Y, or Z, which honestly, I understand that. Yep. But at the same time, there's a big difference between achievement and fulfillment.
Yes.
And we're really not seeking achievement as much as we are seeking fulfillment, and even more so inner peace. Yes. So at some point, that's where the question goes. It's like, what am I actually seeking? That is the best question you can ask yourself. Like, why do I do all of these things? What is beyond it? What is driving me to set the next goal? Better to back up and say, not what is the next goal, but what is the actual feeling that I'm actually searching for in life? Because once I understand the feeling, my goals might look a whole lot different.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, now it's getting good.
Yeah.
Now we're talking.
Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people who are listening to this, and you've also described this in the past as a breakdown that became a breakthrough. Mm-hmm. And let's stay in the breakdown part, because I think a lot of people listening to this will resonate with that. And also that's the part that people gloss over, right? That a breakdown is actually a breakthrough. You got to tear it all down before you can build it back up. What did the hardest stretch of that actually look like day to day for you?
The hardest part for me was the confusion. A big part of I think any transformation is feeling really confused about where you are and why it's happening. We always want to know why something's happening. It's kind of the wrong question. But more importantly, it's like, what is this asking of me? Or, can we stay in the space? So the most difficult for me was just acknowledging that something wasn't working. And in my case, a lot of somethings. And so how do you build a life? Like, how do you get to this point where you have built a life that is bigger than you imagined for yourself? And you actually are in that space and not understanding that you've actually never asked yourself the questions that would help you build the life that you actually need. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like I've done something consciously and unconsciously. I've built something that I thought I wanted based on no particular self-awareness to some degree, because there were parts of my life that were so spot on, like just so aligned with who I am and what fulfills me and why I'm here. And then there was these pieces of the puzzle and the pie piece that were like, that doesn't fit. It's just like I'm constantly taking this round peg and putting in a square hole and it doesn't work. And like, why doesn't it work? Like, why does that piece not work? And so in that part where I was sitting in this discomfort, it was just slowing down to say, I don't know what's coming next, but what is right here? right now, like without having to know what I'm going to do about it, without having to take responsibility for the next steps. It's like, can I just acknowledge what is? I feel like I let all the balls fall down. Like I just let them all hit the ground. I don't think,
And
no.
nobody died.
And here's the thing. I was going to say, I know no one else noticed.
Right?
Like, I am aware that my own burn down and rebuild looked like nothing to most people in my life. But
like you had a nap.
But yeah, but it was like a year.
Yeah.
To be clear, it was like a year of a lot of just sitting in the discomfort of what it was and taking stock of what was, without having to necessarily act upon it. It was easy to start saying the right yeses and the right nos to a few things, just to even give myself some breathing room. It was helpful to acknowledge what did feel aligned, what felt like me, what was a real representation of my deepest, truest self. It was the parts where I was like, what's the truth of what's not working for me right now? I sat in that for a long time without making any decisions about things. And as the clarity started to come and I started to actually ask the questions, I was able to start to make some decisions and one at a time started to change things. So it was a really messy middle.
Yeah. For a year.
At least.
You're married. Did your partner know?
Well, it'd be important to say that I'm not married to the same person.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, okay. This was all part of it. And I will speak to this because all due respect to my ex-husband, we actually have a very good relationship. Here's the thing with all of that is that it was so confusing to me because one of the parts of my life that wasn't working was my intimate relationship, my partner relationship with my husband. And I couldn't get it. I just didn't understand how we couldn't make it work. And I came to recognize that it looked like we wanted the same things. Like the titles were saying, we wanted to be happy and we wanted, all those things. It took me, oddly enough, a long time to recognize that what we believed happiness looked like and what we believed success looked like and what we believed intimacy looked like were not the same things. That might be really obvious to other people, but that was a really challenging thing for me. I'm like, I don't understand. We want the same things. We have a lot of same hobbies, those kinds of things. It just looked like it should work. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand how come we couldn't seem to get there. We both wanted it.
Yeah.
And we just couldn't get there. And it wasn't until I recognized values that I understood that looks different for him than it looks for me. He's a pilot. I mean, it's very common to be very security or safety driven. I feel like I am too, but it looks way different than me. We just live life off of different values. And it's so obvious to me now, it's 100 years later, but here we are and we look at it and it's like, well, I see his life now and I'm like, no wonder we couldn't, but that was just part of it. So I would say, it wasn't the only thing I had to really talk about. My transformation and my breakdown and all that was not about my ex-husband. It was a part of me really getting to know myself in a way that I hadn't before. And I was absolutely gobsmacked and confused that I hadn't asked myself what I think are some of the most basic questions about yourself, myself. I don't know why I didn't know that. I didn't ever sit down and say, like, who am I?
Yeah.
What fulfills me? What do I really want in life? Maybe I had asked those questions, but I didn't do it extremely consciously. And I think in more cases than not, I adopted what I saw around me versus decided to construct from my own creation. But if I didn't have this relationship with myself that I needed to develop, which is really what happened in the messy middle, I wouldn't have been able to know what was going to come next because I just didn't want to build something at a default again.
Right. On this loose, rocky foundation. What you used the word values in there, and it's something we'll crack down at an Aversio Wellness staff meeting that we don't really call staff meetings and just lay it down. What are your top 3 right now? And it's the hardest question. It's the hardest thing, but I think it's so what you did in your relationship. Why are we not all doing that with our partner on a date night once a week? So that it doesn't have to get so far apart. But when we're not speaking that language, when we don't have someone asking us, what a gift to surround yourself with people who will just ask you the things. That's why I hang out with Dr. Desiree, right before this recording, literally, to just get yourself back in alignment with what do you really value? And it doesn't have to be the same thing, but the further apart you get, it's okay to say, we're not those people anymore. I love you. And when we came together, our values were probably more aligned at that time if we look back at who we were then. But aren't we meant to change? Aren't we here to grow and evolve and transform? Like, that's it. That's what this is. We put so much pressure on, like, get to that 50th wedding anniversary because that is success and achievement and happiness. But what if it's not about happiness? What if it is about fulfillment? And everything you just described was the something. If you didn't have a human asking you the questions, wow, were you ever connected to the inner voice that can be what's there for you? It makes me grateful that I have had people around for whatever reason in my life. I guess I've collected them to have to physically ask me the question to go like, what do you mean? What are my values? And then, holy smokes, there's a long list, friends. Go and Google values. You're going to get 1,000 of them. Now pick your top 3. You're going to need to take a week off.
You are.
To look at them. And when you figure them out, everything changes, because are you actually living your life in alignment with those values? Give me 3 things that show you are. Recognize 3 things that aren't, and change those 3 things and change your life. So this is the story. This is where it really begins is, wow, here's what I value. I'd love to just ask you, what do you value today? What are the values? Could you recognize the change in what you might have valued as I'm going to become a chiropractor, I'm going to start this, to like in that moment, oh, I actually value this?
I think that I valued these things. My top 5 values have been there for a very long time. Was I living them? No, not all of them.
Okay.
That's what you're speaking to.
Yeah.
But also too, I mean, number 1, my value is health. Love and connection I put those together because I can't separate love from connection.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's one word. No, it's not. It's a phrase. It's love and connection.
What language you're speaking. We're the only ones, us crazy English folks, who only have one word for love. We're the only ones. Every other language has multiple words that mean the same. So I hear you. We can get it. Yeah.
And freedom. Freedom's one of my highest values. And of course, certain times of our life, our values will start to shift. What one's higher than the other? I mean, COVID was a big one for me. Kind of like freedom. When I felt squeezed,
Yes.
I recognized where that went for me. Yeah. And then I have all sorts of other lingering ones in the side about passion and purpose and adventure and those kinds of things. But really those top 3 for me, that's mostly what drives me all the time. The love and the connection and the freedom and health.
And health. And this is why we love you. Because I do feel that. So today, Dr. Laura today oozes that out of your pores. And that is what I think drew us in to know you, to want to be in your presence, to be receiving breathwork practice from you. And, you're so in alignment with those things now. But I know a lot happened between the metacognition, the awareness, the knowing that something isn't in alignment. I'm going to get it in alignment. And then let's hear the rest of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest part of that for me is also just, you don't know what you don't know oftentimes when you're in it. So it's so much easier to look back and go, oh, that's what was happening. Oh, that's why I did like 30 triathlons that summer, because I was trying to outrun my life. I was really fit and I really enjoyed how much I could eat, but I was actually just doing that. And that's okay. I can love that version of me.
Yes.
Because that served a purpose for me. And, it also gave me a lot of confidence, being able to do those things. So the breakdown to the breakthrough was so helpful for me because it gave me really the ability to let everything drop, and then the space and the latitude to ask myself the questions that I actually needed to ask. And then the strength to be able to start to make decisions in my life that were going to help me live my values more deeply. And, that's where I really understood this idea of aligned living. I also understood, this gap between who I am at the core of my being and who I'm being in my life. And that the bigger the gap is the bigger the mask that I was wearing. And so my whole motivation for several years, it still is, but it was just so primary to me at that time, was keep lessening the gap. Like, just how can I make my life be so deeply me that it's okay if it's uncomfortable for other people?
Yes.
And, it just was, how do I need to do that? And thank you also. And I don't know, Desiree, if you have this experience too, But, all that time being a chiropractor and being in this gifted seat of having people show things to you and share parts of their innermost self and walk with them through life. Some of my patients had been with me for 20 years. Thank you for mirroring to me what that looks like in alignment, and also those who their life circumstance were deeply out of alignment. I just got to be able to see and have this experience of what that looks like, what that feels like, what's the resonance of that. For me, it was, if I'm going to blow up my life, which again, probably nobody else thought I was other than getting divorced. That felt like I was blowing up my life to other people, and I'm not minimizing that. But the bigger piece of all that, if I was going to take the energy to do that, then I sure as heck was going to be taking steps to allow my life to actually reflect myself. So it resulted in lots of changes. It resulted in a shift and a change in my practice. At that time, I had my second practice, and it was, 12 practitioners, 4 front desk people, all the things. It was such a beautiful, impactful community. And I realized I don't want to do that. I actually don't want to be responsible for all those people and all this space and all the things, when what I really wanted to do was just see more practice members. Yeah. So, we took the next year and we wound down that big practice. I bought my own separate practice space, and 4 of us went over there, and I just kind of went back to basics for me. 3 chiros, 1 massage therapist, a couple front desk. And I just decided, as an example of how do I want my life to feel? What's the rhythm? What's the pace? What do I want it to represent? What do I want to feel like as I'm moving through all of this? And so this is where the decisions, like where I live, the house that I bought, all the different pieces of it, that all started to shift for me. And it really came from feeling like I wanted to live on my terms. And to be fair, nobody told me how to live my life before that. I didn't have some overbearing person.
Maybe not consciously, but I do think from the time we're very, very young, our parents are telling us what's right or wrong. And then we go to school, and then I'm guilty of it. I was the elementary school teacher that very much was, I'm going to use the word preaching. And it was so unconscious, but that's what I was taught to teach, that this is the way that you're going to grow up and you're going to get a job and you're going to be, you're going to contribute to society. How many times? Like the things if I could go back, I'm sorry, Dr. Des. If you don't know, we just mentioned this at the beginning before we recorded, but we're 60 or so episodes in, and I don't know how often we remind people, if this is the first episode you're listening to, I was Dr. Desiree's elementary school teacher. So if you didn't know that, now
wild.
You do. And then we come through the education system, which to me is a big part of where we're getting this story of who we should be and how we get to happiness. And then the government comes into our lives because we become taxpayers and we get into the workforce, and we are here in Canada, and that's part of life. So between parents who only want to love their child, and teachers who, if it was me, man, those were my children before I had children. I wanted nothing more than what was best for. And then let's just believe that our government, because that's a different conversation, also wants what's best for us as citizens. Nobody's telling us who to be with anything other than our best interests, but we can't hear it from those other people. So and I think we do run this subconscious, and we know in neuroscience, 95% of who we are is unconscious. It is a set of programs and conditions that we're just running every day. Only 5% of us is this conscious mind. And what you're talking about is getting the glimpse of, wait a minute, all those things that I learned along the way about who I should be and what it means to have this great life, maybe that's not it. Even though all those people love me and wanted what's best. And when you get that glimpse, like you're just describing a healing journey to me. And I think you experienced it. I don't know. We haven't really talked about your personal health, not what this episode's about, but what you went on as a journey to where you got to and then had to have the breakdown. So many people could mirror that on a health journey,
100%.
Getting to this place where and that's enough. And that's enough. And the healing journey is the moment you have the knowing that you have everything inside of you to heal yourself. But that's not what your parents told you when they took you to the doctor every day. And that's sure not what your teachers taught you. And I guarantee you That's not what the government's telling you today. So you really have to start unbelieving what you were taught along the way. So you've just painted this beautiful picture that it can be done. And for somebody the practice that you described, there's so many people out there listening right now that's their goal.
Right.
Be prepared when you get there. There might be more there. And maybe you just saved yourself a bit of time to stop and ask now about the feeling. And that's what comes through when you're talking to me. Can we experience the emotions of our future self now and feel what that feels like in our body? That is your breath work to me. It takes me about 2 seconds when you start speaking to feel my true self and then know that's where I want to be more of the time. And these things I'm doing in the day, like at my 9 o'clock meeting this morning, it's not it. So how do I create a life now? And this is the rest of your story. Now you have to go create it. I know what I want it to feel like. How do we create that? Because we sure were not taught the neuroscience of creation. Okay, everyone, real talk here for a second. Reishi is the one product in our whole lineup that both Dr. Desiree and I take without fail every single night. And not because we have to, because we really notice when we don't.
Oh yeah, and it is not subtle. It is the difference between lying in bed, running through tomorrow's to-do list, and actually feeling your body downshift.
Yes, that is exactly it. It's not a sedative. It doesn't knock you out. It just lets you land.
Yeah, and that's because of what's actually happening biologically. Reishi's calming effect comes down to compounds called triterpenes, specifically ganoderic acids that are unique to reishi. They're part of what's been studied for supporting the body's stress response system. You've heard of us say the HPA axis, and for helping the nervous system come down out of that wired, tight-chested state that a lot of us live in by default.
Which, if you're anything like me, can be most of the day, some days.
Yeah, it's most people's, but here's the part that nobody talks about. Those triterpenes are alcohol soluble. They're not water soluble. So a reishi tea or a hot water only extract is never going to give you meaningful levels of them. It'll give you beta glucans, which have their own awesome value, but you'll miss the exact compounds that are responsible for the calming effect that you're actually looking for.
Yeah, and this is why our reishi capsules are a 15-to-1 dual extract. That's super concentrated. They are hot water and alcohol extracted so that you're getting both the beta glucans and those triterpenes from the whole fruiting body. No mycelium grown on grain and always organic certified.
And the dose matters just as much as the extraction does. One capsule delivers 3,750 milligrams quantity crude equivalent. That is a real clinically relevant amount. It's not a sprinkle.
Yeah, no pixie dusting over here. And for me, it shows up first thing in the morning. I wake up and I don't have that heavy, dragging feeling, even on the nights that I didn't get a full 8 hours of sleep.
That is a really common early marker that people report. It's that shift from waking up tired to waking up feeling restored. It's one of the reasons that reishi tends to convert people into long-term mushroom nerds faster than almost anything else in this category.
Yes, so if your nervous system has forgotten what it feels like to actually settle, or if you are lying awake replaying your day at 11 o'clock at night, this is worth trying.
You can start with just one capsule about 30 to 60 minutes before bed and give it a couple of weeks because this is nervous system retraining. It's not just a light switch.
Yeah, so head on over to aversiowellness.com and you can use code podcast15 for 15% off any order anytime. So that's podcast15 right at checkout.
There's a mushroom for every moment. And tonight, it might just be this one. Back to the show.
We weren't. So we weren't. So we're going to have to get that somewhere else. So
that's such a brilliant, first of all, that's brilliant. Thank you for putting that all together in one little package because it can be that simple in theory and not that simple. A couple things come to mind. For me, I had a very, very masculine presence in my life and, bless these situations, but my dad was an entrepreneur. And I looked up to him as the one I wanted to appease because there's always usually one more than the other in your family.
Yeah.
So I had to ask myself, like, who do I need to become to be able to be recognized by that person? I didn't ask myself consciously. That is, as you spoke, very unconscious. And then I sought out all masculine representatives for myself through my whole life unconsciously. I found myself in masterminds and I looked around. And to be clear, because there was no social media, I just didn't see examples. You
Right.
know, there
Yes.
were other women doing it, but most of us were doing it like we were men
Yep.
with breasts, really kind of how it went. And I found myself even in a mastermind community, all of my partners were men. And every week at 7 a.m., I got a phone call, not a Zoom call. I got on a phone call and we talked about our weekly goals, our quarterly goals, like all the things. And none of that's bad. But for me, I just kept going to what was familiar. And when this all happened, the first thing I did is bless those really awesome 4 men that I just love, but I just didn't want to be part of that anymore. And because of the extremeness of where I was, I became very anti-goal for a while. I just was like, I'm not setting the goal. No more goals for me right now. And I still set it, but I call them different things. I still get a bit of a scratch when I decide. But for me, I needed to go in that direction. That was the first thing. And the next thing I recognized is that when I say I needed to blow up my life to change, I really didn't. And I didn't blow up my life. It was the 2%. It was like a 2% shift in my life. Like I always think of the analogy about I'm the world's worst golfer. And I recognize that when you come up to the ball and you are going to hit the ball, where your feet are matters, because just a little shift in your foot means that when you swing and you make contact with that ball, the trajectory is like, it goes from tiny to very large.
Yes.
And that is so comforting to me because I recognize that I can actually make very large transformation in my life with just small changes.
With just a thought.
With just a thought.
People don't believe us, Dr. Laura. You're the living proof of it.
Well, I might be the living proof of it, but you two both speak to this quite a bit. And I think it's so helpful because we give the thinking mind too much, right? Like we give too much credence to the thinking mind, but that's different than a thought, like the runaway thought. It's intentional. The runaway thought is the thing that's the overthinking of the mind, but the intentional thought is where the power is. That's the place I think we don't spend enough time. So to your point, the way that we can condition ourselves to think, the words that we use, all of that, the tone, the vibration, the coherence of it all, it's really, really important. And I guess, the bigger part of deciding to make a shift in your life is just bringing a lot of those things in closer, just recognizing like what feels like me, and when you do know your values and you've spent the time to do that, that helps because you have this thing that you can automatically come back to and say like, does this bring this back to me living this value or it doesn't? Because if it does, what we know about values is when you live your values, almost everybody will report a higher level of fulfillment.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it's not about achievement. That's how you get down to fulfillment. Understanding who you are at the core of your being, deciphering those types of things, and then aligning with that and not doing it from a place of shaming yourself, but just of like recognizing in these constant little course corrections as you go to life. When you don't feel the way you want to feel, it's not about feeling perfect all the time. That is not what life's about.
That was
right?
hard for me.
It's hard.
That was 5 years of like, what do you mean perfection is not? What are you talking about? Like that, that's a lot of unlearning for a lot of people in this age, 30 to 50, 30 to 60 even, I'm going to say.
It's
like,
true.
What are you talking about? But what you're describing to me too, and I could feel it as you start to say it, you are putting out an energy that is different when you're bringing yourself in that alignment, and everyone around you notices it. They feel it when you walk in a room, and it starts deterring some people from wanting to be near that because they're not meant for you. And it starts attracting like a magnet, like attracts like. We know this.
Yeah.
And you literally are building a life without you having to consciously change an action even. Just you getting into that, what you're describing, coming along this road and course correcting, you're drawing in what is more meant for you. And that, like those, if we could have had that moment when we were 30 instead of whenever you or whatever, I just see as we talk about it more, and that's what you're sharing with the world is let's get there before we have to go through so much of what went through, because where we're headed is really, really, really awesome. And when you get to a point where you don't want for a lot, like you were saying, financially, it's nice to be in a place where we can sit and say, I don't need more money. And I'm not a millionaire, but I
Right.
don't need more. Not because, that wouldn't be nice. And I understand not everybody has it, but that's not it anymore. Can we get to a place where we actually don't want anything other than for other people to just feel for a minute what it feels like to be in the true alignment? That's what we want for others. And that's why you do continue to do the work that you do. That's why you didn't retire when you really
Right.
could have. What you're describing to
Yeah.
me right now
Yeah.
is so many people saying, and I am golfing. I'm going to move my feet that 2% and I'm going to hit that ball. And that is my life. And that's amazing. But
Well,
you're not that person. And I'm so glad that you didn't say, and I'm retired, because then let's keep going. And I know Dr. Desiree is going to dive in and poke you for more, but what you turned that into is what so many people don't do. And it, to me, is what's changing the world. It's very exciting.
thank you.
Yeah. As you're talking, Laura, and even you, Brandy, like there are some threads that are very similar. Like I really love what you said about like you didn't blow up your life. And I think a lot of us think that to make changes and to be back in alignment. I'm reminded of that book. I can't remember the author, but it's The Way of Integrity, where people think like integrity is like more structural and whatever, but it's really just coming into energetic alignment. And it's so interesting that you say you made these small shifts that course corrected you to be in alignment with your values, and you didn't blow up your life. And it's the small energetic shifts. And now you're working with homeopathy, which are small, subtle shifts energetically. I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense.
Yeah. Homeopathy has been something that has been a steady stream in my whole adult life. Or I think more clarity would say my eldest son is 25. A homeopathic induction is how I started the journey. I had been overdue by multiple weeks. I had midwifery care, and I had a homeopath come to my home. And I often will say it, for 2 hours, she asked me the oddest questions. And I didn't have anything against homeopathy. I just had no experience with homeopathy, but I had lots of experience with the innate intelligence of the body. And so for me, this was an aligned thing. I just didn't have experience. She asked me all these crazy questions. She gave me a remedy.
Tell us, give us some of the people want to know. What did she ask you?
Oh,
I love this.
I mean, just even things like, what do I dream about? And, what happens when I have that dream, and where does that come back to? And then literally asking me all these questions from my point of conception of like when I was young, and all the different ways that I moved through life, and the things that were highlights for me, like the time that I fell off the bike and then that happened. And all I'm doing is I'm 43 weeks pregnant. I'm a small whale, and I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, I just didn't really understand it at the time. And she gave me these 2 little sugar pellets that were phosphorus, and I popped them in my mouth, and I looked at my husband, and we were like, let's go to the afternoon matinee. And she left, we said goodbye. And about 5 minutes later, I was like trying to put my shoes on, and I was already in full blown labor. And what I love about homeopathy is it is the most intelligent tap on the shoulder innately in the body. And that the closer the remedy matches the human and the state of the human in that moment as well, the more that it's going to allow the body to just lift whatever it is standing in the way for the body to move forward. And that was a perfect example for me. I did look twice after that. I thought, okay, this homeopathy thing has something to offer, because it wasn't much of a placebo effect for me, because I just really didn't have any thoughts about it.
Yeah.
Having said that, thank you for that experience, because, I have used that form of healing together with many other natural forms of healing through my whole adult life. And since, that's really the only thing my kids have really had as the staple amongst it all. And so now, as an acute prescribing chiropractor, rather a doctor, homeopath, however you want to say it, that's the thing I'm focusing on. And it just seemed like a natural thing for me now to say, now I'm going to go in and do deeper work and go deeper inside homeopathy, because it really does match my philosophy about life, my philosophy about healing. Again, it just comes back to that. What I loved about what you said, Desiree, is the aspect of tuning in to your own life, and however you use that. And to me, it doesn't matter if you're talking about homeopathy. Obviously, I was a chiropractor for a very long time. All of these pieces to me say the same thing, which is there's always a window into somebody's healing. There's never just one way. You know this as a practitioner. It's not one specific supplement. It's not one specific remedy. It's not one intervention. It's asking a person and tuning into the person and co-creating with your patient, your practice member, your client as to what's the window into their own healing. And it is not just one thing, right? It's never just one thing. It's always just paying attention to life and being curious about life that helps you kind of find that window in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Through your journey, I mean, you went from living in Canada and then you decided that you're going to live abroad in Costa Rica before moving back to British Columbia. What made that chapter abroad the right next step at the time for you? Like, was that a window into your healing? Like, I need to put my roots somewhere else?
Right. Well, to give us some context, it was during the pandemic and we had thought about going abroad, taking a break. I remember there was a point in time because I know, like all of us, I know people around the world and we weren't all having the same experience. And I remember thinking, so in some way, shape or form, I'm choosing this. I know that sounds harsh and I don't mean it to be, but if I have the latitude, the ability to pick myself up and go somewhere else, I could be having a different experience.
Amen, sister.
Right? Like other people were. And so, for better or worse. And the government helped me because on a given day, my husband and I both contributed financially to the Freedom Rally, the truckers' convoy. We both donated money, which apparently the government didn't like, and we got flagged. And we woke up one day to a large portion of our personal and corporate accounts frozen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And thank you for that, government, because we didn't have a knee-jerk reaction, but it was telling. It's like any point in time. It was an eye-opener. It was like I knew that they weren't really rallying for my success in life, but at the same time, right. That's true. And also, there was nobody we could talk to. Nobody would take a phone call from us on that.
Yeah.
It was just the wildest. And we just happened to be on a self-isolating holiday in Tofino at the time. And when this happened, we got to sit with it for a few days because we were away for a while.
What a gift.
It was a gift, kind of uncomfortable. It wasn't a very fun vacation, quote unquote, but we did definitely, walk the beaches, get really clear again on our values. Came back home to our 4 kids and talked about what our options were. We didn't know where, but we wanted to consider it. And we made some very aligned decisions at that point collectively to decide how do we want to move forward. So for us...
With your children?
With our children. Okay. I mean, all of our children at that point were 20 to 24 years old. We're a blended family.
Okay.
All 4 of them are within 3 years of each other. And we were really...
They're going to go with you if you decide you're going somewhere.
Well, we hope so.
Okay.
Right? And so for me, I was kind of like, with my 2, I was like, I can't go if they don't go. And I also don't want to make them go. So, and I wasn't going to make them go. So it was a matter of like us sitting down, and to be fair, my partner, my husband, Paul, he was making that arrangement with his 2 kids. And even though, we had been together almost 10 years at that point, at the same time, I'm not their parent. So we had to kind of have these together and apart discussions. My 2 boys decided they wanted to come. His 2 kids decided they wanted to go back and forth. He was comfortable with that. They were comfortable with that. Their mother was here in Canada, and that was our decision. So for us, it was a decision about how can we actually take a break from this experience that we're having. That's really where it was. It wasn't like I hate Canada, because I don't.
Right.
It wasn't about anything like that. Again, it had to do with this value of freedom was like quickly moving up.
And health.
And health.
What you're describing is living in a lot of stress, a bit of survival all the time, which is never going to lead us to health. So you're really 2 of your biggest values are hitting you over the head at that point.
And really, that was the start of it for us. We just decided to make it happen, and one decision after another. We went down to Nicaragua, we checked it out, and then we ended up coming back into Costa Rica. Felt like that was much more aligned with where we were at the time. Buying a house unseen, I don't recommend, but we did. And then we went down, we kept our house in Canada for a little while, and then we decided to go ahead and sell it, and we vacated our lives. It was, in retrospect, I'm like, that was a lot. That was a
brave.
lot.
That was
right?
brave.
It was a lot. And also, we're on the other side of it. And I don't know what it would have been like had I stayed here. So for us, we had the experience. It felt right. We said yes to it. And then, we didn't stay, but we stayed there for 3 years and it was a great experience.
Hey, it's Desiree, and that's where we're going to leave it today for our episode with Dr. Laura Foster. We actually had to split this episode into 2 parts because the conversation with Dr. Laura was just so good and so enriched with so much knowledge that we just didn't want you to miss out. So if there was anything in part 1 of this episode that resonated with you, just know that part 2 gets even better. And I'm so excited for you to listen. We'll see you in the next one. Be well, everyone.